I like how much that phrase has like
We are streaming now.
and it made its way through. Well, hello.
Yeah, well, we're streaming, but I haven't flipped off the logo yet. Because
I'm so confused. I'm getting so many mixed signals.
yeah, no, Josh spoke right as I hit it, and I make sure that
Good
the
for you.
streams are
That's
working.
the first 5 seconds of this stream. It's gonna be.
Well, hello, and welcome to Derps Talk About Games. I'm your co-host Mango,
And I am your co-host, Buddy.
and today we're going to talk a little bit about rats in the walls. But before we do that, Buddy, why don't you tell folks at home what it is we do on this podcast?
On this podcast, okay, we talk about games, and for the first time for many of you, I think Josh, you've been on the podcast before, right? For the first time, we're gonna see a couple of guests who have dutifully come to participate in our little post-mortem, our little after adventure. What do they call it? Look, because you are Critical Role, don't they do a little adventure thing after the episodes? Or maybe Dimension 20 does it.
They definitely used to. I don't think they do anymore.
I feel like it's like called a thing, and I want to call it that version of the thing, but I don't watch any of these shows, so I don't remember.
Basically, every single one has a different name for it.
Oh, okay. Well, good. Then I guess there's
like
party.
Yeah, the adventuring party. There's rest.
You're describing a retrospective, man.
I am describing a retro. I guess I did call it a postmortem in the announcement.
Well, so coming from the software world, the postmortem is like after like a big blow up, like a incident zeros, like a priority zero kind of like incident. Whereas a retrospective is just kind of like a normal kind of like how the last 2 weeks go. When I was working for a military contractor, they called it an after-action report because, of course, they did.
Of course, they did.
Yeah.
Well, gamers, let's take a minute for the folks at home who all know exactly who you are and what your voices sound like, but also for those that maybe don't. Starting with Rachel, would you like to introduce yourself to the listeners of the pod?
I mean, you just said my name, so is there really any introduction for me to do?
Well, who did you play in the campaign?
I played Sophia Steelstrop.
You might know Rachel from walking in the background in the podcast in previous episodes. Real quick, Buddy, Rachel is not bleeding into your microphone. You are bleeding into Rachel's microphone.
Roger that, good buddy. Roger that. Okay.
That's a huge surprise.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, that I am the loud one, right? To my good friend Josh, would you like to introduce yourself to the podcast? Again, have you been on the podcast before, buddy?
I've been here like maybe twice.
Yeah, okay. Would you like to introduce yourself to the gamers?
I'm Josh, and I played Azid, who definitely had a last name, but I've already forgotten it.
Okay, and then finally, my good pal Lowkicks. Would you like to introduce yourself to the folks at home?
I am Lowkicks. I played Zareth. I don't remember if I gave myself a last name or not. I play the WoW with Bairn. I used to stream.
Yep.
That's me.
And then we have one player, one special guest who's not in the chat tonight, our good friend Druidbull, who played the Druid Riago in Rats in the Walls. He is busy, so he's not going to be part of this after action report /retro/ postmortem. And then I guess that just leaves Mango, you and me. Obviously, I was the game master. I suppose I should say that for anybody who wants to understand the context going forward. Do you want to talk a little bit about your character, Mango?
Sure. Yeah. I played Roderick Dick Blackglass, Private Eye. For those of you who know Pathfinder 2e, he was a mastermind rogue with a crossbow specialist dedication. We played free archetype, so is one of the crossbowy dedications. But yeah, it was a very kind of why don't you pitch the adventure, or explain the premise and go over what you want to for like top.
Yeah, that was just what I was thinking. About. So Rats in the Walls, I've talked about it on the podcast a couple of times. I was pretty thrilled that you guys chose it because it's been one that I've had for in my head for sort of the longest time. It was one of the original when I originally kind of revisited my Ceran doc and I started making pitches for it, which was in 2022, I want to say. It was one of the original 5 or maybe 7 pitches that I included in there. Those pitches, I described them at the time, like using like video games and like movies and stuff. I wrote, think True Detective meets Chinatown meets Vermintide is what I had written for Rats in the Walls like 4 years ago or something kind of along those lines. But I really loved this idea of kind of a noir murder mystery that is centered around kind of a conspiracy that includes Skaven, right? And as like a core kind of animating force. The thing that I had written in the campaign pitches was the Citadel Krahz-shek lies deep in the heart of Dragonborn territory, but a series of gruesome murders catches your attention. Ritualistic killings, a cult within the walls. Krahz-shek should be safe from the Ratmen, shouldn't it? You'll have to follow the clues and put the pieces together if you want to prove that somehow the Skaven have pierced deep into Dragonborn territory and you have to drive them out. That was like the original sort of conception for what the pitch of the campaign was. And I wrote that I think I wrote that in like 2022. So it was almost 5 years ago, almost half a decade ago.
Yeah. Very cool.
Yeah.
And so we did that. We solved.
And so we did
mysteries.
that. It's funny because reading that back, I kind of don't know that I actually really delivered on some of the aspects of that promise, right? Like there was a cult operating within the walls, and Krahz-shek, was not safe from the Ratmen, but the Skaven ended up being a little bit more minor, I guess, than their titular sort of nature. When you got to kind of like the back half of what the conspiracy represented and all of that.
So, question: was that like always the plan? Where the Skaven always supposed to be like not quite a red herring, but were they always supposed to be like like was the power the power behind the obvious big bad? Was that always the plan to have it be kind of like a secondary?
Yeah, in a certain sense, yes. The Skaven, I always envisioned it as the Skaven are a means to an end, right? Like the Skaven are the knife, but somebody in Krahz-shek was going to be, holding that knife and wielding it to kind of whatever dark purposes. This would end up being the brothers Volterius, who you guys killed in kind of like the final battle. But when I wrote this, I didn't really have the conspiracy in mind. I just kind of knew, I was like, somebody is using Skaven to commit murders for like a sneaky purpose, right? And then when we actually committed to the game, I wrote this big long document about the nature of the entire conspiracy because I was like, I have to establish all of this up front or else it'll never make sense if I try and wing it. You know what I mean? You can't improv that kind of thing, even though I improv a lot of what I do at D&D. I guess that's kind of how it all sort of came together.
Very cool.
I also knew that a big piece of this was going to be the conspiracy board that you guys ended up making, which is the crowning achievement. I would probably say I wanted the conspiracy board more than anything to come away from Rats in the Walls, trying to like piece it all together.
I'll throw it to the other players. How did you guys feel like that the gameplay delivered on the premise? I think some of this you can also like go into like whether or not you thought the mechanic, because I like Pathfinder 2nd Edition a lot, but I also don't know that it supports kind of mechanically at least this kind of thing. A lot of it was done in freeform storytelling, which I think is fine, but I don't know if the mechanics supported kind of conspiracy mystery solving super well. What do the rest of you guys think about that kind of stuff?
I would probably agree with you there. In concept and in the freeform storytelling aspect, it definitely worked. Like I felt like we were solving a mystery, but as far as mechanically, I don't really feel like the gameplay worked for it. It also could be I'm not nearly as familiar with Pathfinder, so I spent a good portion of the first 2 or 3 sessions just trying to learn how to play the game.
Yeah, we
And
eventually got to a place that I thought was pretty cool. Like people were doing cool stuff with their characters in like the system of Pathfinder, but it definitely was like only in that final dungeon. I would probably say that it really came together.
yeah, like I feel like the second to last movie, third to last session was when I really started figuring out how I wanted to play Zareth.
Mm.
And by then, the mystery was solved. We were in the final 2 dungeon areas. We were literally just going after our big bad. And so by the time I knew what I was doing with Pathfinder, the adventure portion of the story had concluded. And we were pretty much in, I think we did 2 or 3 straight sessions of almost all combat. I think we had a bit of RP in the second to last one, but that was mostly combat too.
Yeah, it was pretty wall to wall. That was technically there were technically 9 dungeon rooms that you guys went through. But I skipped one of them. Because we skipped the whole wing just for time. Like at the end of that one, it was like, okay, now you have to go to the third wing and do a whole other thing that's related to nuclear reactors. And I don't even remember what it is, but it's in my sheet. And I just cut all of that, and you guys skipped right to right to the end.
We unlocked our skip. We had our allies taking care of that
Yeah.
portion.
Oh yeah, and you also skipped the encounter with the hero point, because
Yeah.
turning that guy into Brother Antonius or whatever. You know what? Honestly, we had to do a lot of skipping for time, and probably that was good. Probably
Yeah.
that worked well.
I also think that that's like the way you like to use hero points for people at home. The way Buddy does
Yeah.
not use hero points the way that the system usually use them. They're basically kind of like free narrative control. I think that kind of thing is kind of like what makes your version of that system shine, right? It's like, oh, I have a clever thing that if it were to happen like this would make sense. It's like, okay, we can do that. We can, glide over the encounter with a well placed kind of moment.
Oh yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I lit a whole dumpster on fire and then fixed it.
Yeah, that's true. You did light a
I
dumpster on fire. That was a wild set of circumstances. I will say one of the things that surprised me early in the game is I thought you guys were going to find the rat warren pretty immediately because of the sewer. You watch the rat go into the sewer, and I just expected you guys were going to go investigate the sewer and see the. You eventually got there, but like see the cleared out steam tunnel. For folks at home, because Krahz-shek is underground, Dragonborn live in these obsidian citadels that are in the hearts of volcanoes. They have a whole complicated water filtration system that the players, came to understand the rats were using to they would shut off the water and then slip through the tunnels in order to travel in a way that nobody expected, kind of thing. And I thought that you guys were going to figure that out that night, and it took 4 sessions to like work through that piece because you were just following all of these other leads that were included in the crime scene, which I thought was pretty funny, but also a great example of you can never predict this kind of stuff.
Yeah, I feel like my impression of it was that like, oh, you can't go into the sewers until you figure out how to deal with the, it might burn you to death problem, which, I think kept us away from that as like a primary point of investigation. Because, and it's funny to hear, because like, you probably said something about that and expected to find like an easy solution to it, but like, you say something like that and the rest is like, oh, well, I guess we're not going into the sewer. It's time to do something else, right? Like,
and there was a lot of other good stuff to exit. Like one of the things that was nice about that is there was a lot of good stuff to investigate. Like I actually kind of think that it worked in a weird way better because once you got to the rat warren, instead of having a bunch of clues that didn't make sense, you kind of already had all of the previous clues that you needed. Inside at the bottom of the rat warren, there's a chest that includes all of the murder orders that the conspiracy have been giving to the Skaven in order to commit these murders. And because you guys investigated the murders first, as soon as you opened that chest and you looked inside, all of that stuff immediately made sense. But like if you had gone immediately, only one of them would have, right? Like the one for whatever that guy's name was, the gnome that you did a bunch of investigating for, right? Like that, like that stuff would have been breadcrumbs instead of being kind of like the end result of the investigation.
agreed. What else can we talk about here? How did so the way we ended up playing the game, it was very kind of like skill and talk and RP focused in the first half, right? It took us a while to get to like any combat really, which it's as a kind of like classic D20 system, PF2E is kind of built on top of combat. I think that D&D is like, oh, there are all these pillars, but like at the end of the day, the combat's the most fleshed out and complicated system. The game is run on combat. Do you think we just went over how that wasn't exactly your intention? Do you think it worked out the way that or roughly the way you wanted to? And after you answer, I would also throw it to the other players.
I had actually thought that you guys were kind of trip over a couple of other instances of combat, because I had put some stuff like in the flows, which were like, for the folks at home, the flows are sort of the slums of the city. It is where it's like down by the lava flows, and so it's like unbearably hot. It's where all the gangs and stuff are. In my mind, the flows was this place where you guys were kind of close to getting jumped and or ambushed. And you spent a little bit of time down in the flows, but the whole thing with the riot hadn't triggered. And so it was still kind of sort of safe. And also you just like didn't roll it on the tension pool, which is where it all sort of like lived basically. So we actually, I don't think we really hit combat until you guys got to the Rat Warren, which was the first of, I had originally scoped it for 3 dungeons, right? There was the Rat Warren, there was the monastery, or maybe the hideout, the Quencher's hideout, depending on how that kind of like went. And then the final piece was Reactor X, Reactor 10, which obviously completely collapsed, given sort of like the nature of how the story went, but whatever. That's the world that we live in.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. How did the rest of you feel about the structure and the combat and the balance there?
Once I knew how to play my character, I felt pretty good. I felt I made a pretty decent DPS. Pets seem really fucking strong, really strong in Pathfinder. Like they seem insanely strong.
Yeah, just like the action economy that they have is like really intensely powerful, I feel like.
Yeah, the balancing act for that is that they generally hit less frequently, just because like you really can only have one pet that's at like even like close to parity with you, and then the other ones you're generally gonna have to roll high to actually get the hits to land. But that doesn't stop you from doing things like using them for positioning, for flanking, or stuff like that. So there's definitely that aspect to it. It's also pretty hard to get, or rather, for people at home, we started at level 4 or 5, and we moved up.
Yeah, I think it was like level 4 or 5. I can't remember.
That's right around when you could start getting those things to come online. It would have been a much different experience if you had played Zareth from level 1, where I think you would have it would have been harder at least to get access to a second pet before level 2 or 3 at least. So
yeah.
Josh, I feel like you you said that you were probably going to put Azid back in the box and not take him out again after this. Do you feel like you were let down by the Thaumaturge class? What was your end result there?
I just think, first off, I found out late in the game there that I've basically been cheating the whole time because I misunderstood one of my mechanics there.
Oh no! Oh right,
Remember?
the esoteric
You
lore.
were there.
Yeah.
Yeah, the esoteric lore is much more limited.
Yeah.
And I thought, but basically, it just plays like a melee class and literally just has mechanics to boost your damage to make up for the fact that you are not actually a melee class. And you don't really have that interesting things added to it. The
so
most
this is
interesting thing was like the mirror that I used to blink at the end.
Yeah, there was definitely that stuff. Like you could make the little shadow jutsu clone. You did some cute stuff with that at the end in the reactor, I guess.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they're pretty implement dependent on how they play out. Because in a different game, I had one of the other party members with Thaumaturge, and he was just constantly like, I guess he had a bell as an implement, and he was just constantly ringing the bell, and that was his like major contribution to combat was, debuff the enemy by ringing this bell 1,000 times.
Yep. Yeah, just like the majority of the first part was just me. I have a lantern, and it could reveal some secret shit, and also you get a +1 on your perception, I guess.
Yeah.
That was my job for a while.
Yeah.
It's kind of how I felt in the last game we played. I felt I was a bless machine, and then that's all I did.
Which is in
Yeah,
5e.
that was
I
in
was a
5e for
paladin
sure.
in 5e, and I just pretty much blessed, and by the time my turn came back around, I was either fighting a mook or the combat was over.
Yeah,
Everyone got great advantage of it.
there's a lot that's weird about I think the way that I design encounters because I have these incredibly mechanics heavy. Like I basically never run anything out of the book ever. I always scope out all of my own sort of like monsters, and they all have these like complicated mechanics attached to them, or like the fights will have these complicated mechanics attached to them. And it sort of means that like in a certain sense you can't just like hit the boss. Like there's no patchwork enemy ever in like in these D&D games. You're always trying to like do a thing as you do the thing, which I think is good but also complicated, by I don't know. I don't know how fun it is for you guys necessarily sometimes. I'm sure there's a bunch that are a bunch of those encounters that are just like not as straightforward as they could be.
Yeah, I think it's a balancing act because there's some aspect of encounter design without any of that stuff. If you make the kind of terrain have interesting features, you can get people to do like neat stuff, right? Like
Mhm.
anybody that has any sort of shaping or like cover creating stuff, you can do some like neat stuff with that without those secondary things. And I think if you push those mechanics too hard, then like it's essentially either beat on the boss or do the mechanic, right? Which is kind of very wow coded, funnily enough. I think it's having the right balance of like having enough that it's like a thing to do, but not so much that you feel like that's the only thing you can do besides like the core combat wheel. Part of that too is that like once you play in the system enough, you kind of get a feeling for like, oh, it is beneficial to stack debuffs in a way such that because the system has 10 up crits. So for people at home that don't know, Pathfinder, you crit if you beat the target by 10 in addition to a nat 20. And so knocking somebody's AC down by 2 is still valuable to like a normal fighter, or still valuable to a character that would normally hit because it gives them an increased chance to crit.
Yeah, it is both a 10% increased chance to hit and a 10% increased chance to crit, which is pretty strong, pretty insane, I would say.
Yeah, and so like a lot of the game is understanding how all the systems interact, and it's a very complex system, and they keep piling more shit on top of it because the joke I like to make is that the Wizards of the Coast have a lot of magic cards to sell, and so they give you a book like every 5 years or whatever. Whereas like Paizo only really has like Pathfinder and then like another TTRPG, which is Starfinder, and so you get like 2 books a year at this point, which is a decrease. Back in 1E, they were doing like a floppy book a month, and that was fucking nuts because you got the most imbalanced shit in those soft covers. But
Rachel, how did you feel about Sophia the Bard, and your ability to use mechanics and needle dart and all the rest?
I would say that I did not like playing Sophia very much, but I think I just didn't build her very well.
What do you think she was like lacking?
I just think that I didn't choose good spells. And I just think that I didn't quite. We kind of had too many faces, and she was a bard who was built to be almost 90% face, and so it just kind of ended up being that I was not doing much besides making ladders. So
Yeah, making ladders was definitely a core part of Sophia's contribution, and the accent. Okay, Ratman.
I felt like Sophia had in the role play section. Sophia was a real kind of driving force with the reporter angle. I thought that was very clever, but I understand that didn't exactly translate to the most fun stuff in combat necessarily.
Yeah, I also don't have a good sense for how Bard is sort of like supposed to play or function, right? Like Bard in 5e, I guess you kind of have like bardic inspiration, and you can kind of do these big buffs with like bardic songs or whatever. But Pathfinder, I don't know how well it sort of translates that kind of that kind of class feature
The-
to its system.
So the way that works is it's a focus spell, but it's a cantrip focus spell, so it doesn't cost focus points. And you either have to dedicate a round to it or an action to it every round to keep it up, or there's a couple feats that let you like let it. It's like a lingering song or something that let you make a check or spend a point. I forget exactly the mechanic to let it float on for a while, but like it does kind of tax the action economy pretty heavily. Is you have to figure out a way to keep that going if that's what you want to do with the bard. And I don't know if that's true for all the muses. I forget how the different muses work, but the kind of classic bard does have that +1.
What kind of muse was Sophia?
I don't remember, but I don't think I had bardic inspiration. I think I had like these auras, which were probably not as like they were just like a +1 circumstance bonus to like AC or something, which was a little tough for a focus point.
Yeah, this might have been just like a communication problem, because I think everybody gets one cantrip or one cantrip focus spell, and again, it is a very different system, and so that's maybe just like a bad on.
You obviously played Shajarak in Heretic Heroes, which was also Pathfinder 2e. Do you feel like Shajarak was kind of like a better built character for the mechanics?
Yes.
Okay. But listen, when we finally did get to the conspiracy board, it was kind of you and Josh and Mango all, really worked together to put that board in line and connect all of the red, I don't know, yarn.
Yeah, no, it was fun uncovering the conspiracy and trying to put together what happened, and working on hunches and guesses and like little pieces of stuff.
I feel like I had so many red herrings, but you guys actually got through almost all of them. There were a couple like little ones that kind of hung around towards the end, but I was kind of impressed how pretty close, even without like all of the information. You basically got everything in that sort of thing where you went to the governor, the town governor, to explain how his two brothers are part of this conspiracy. And that was like 95% of the way there. I think the only pieces that you were missing was the thing that gets revealed in that meeting, which was about, kind of Anatarian, which I wasn't really planning to do it that way, but it made sense.
Yeah. How did everybody feel about the kind of story, like the conspiracy? How did people like? I thought it was pretty satisfying to like work through everything and figure out what was happening. I still don't know if I have a full grasp on like what Anatarian's kind of base objectives were. But I got the impression that it was kind of like like more madness than it was like a direct kind of thing. Maybe that's the right explanation. But I did find kind of I do feel a little. I felt a little disappointed that like the rats kind of like literally just were like not relevant past the
That's fair.
the closing.
I feel that too. I
Okay,
thought that
yeah.
this would be mostly rats.
For being the titular enemy, we did.
For being the titular enemy, yeah, that's true.
Listen,
happened.
we all chose not to go through the skitter gate, and
Right.
that's on us.
We could
I
have
was
just done
playing with it. I thought about it. My low wisdom math was very into going through that gate. If anyone had said, "Hey, what's on the other side of that?" he would have been like, "Let's do it. Maybe I can make a buck."
Yeah, when I was thinking about the rats and how I wanted them to sort of play, there's this thing of like, having this like a group that nobody has noticed, but who are sort of like active in the city for a long time, that really like tested. I don't know. I'm like a weird suspension of disbelief guy, in a sense that I always want to have to explain all of this stuff. So that's where I was like, okay, how are the rats moving around? Well, they're using the pipes, and like that was where all the pipe stuff kind of came from. Also, as a reference to Chinatown, because whatever, it's about water and and like the LA water wars and that kind of stuff. Um but yeah, I guess even from the very first sort of iteration, once I got in my mind that the conspiracy is about the two brothers plus Anatarian, but Anatarian is kind of like a twist. In my mind, he's supposed to kind of be the twist in the third act. You know what I mean? That like, oh, there's actually this other crazy thing happening with this guy, who seems otherwise helpful and non-threatening, but turns out to be the one putting the city most at risk. The rats really did just kind of like fall away from that equation pretty quickly.
I do like since we also had a Skittergate in the first game that we failed to go through. I like the idea that this is like a TV show where like every season there's a Skittergate and we keep not going through it, and like finally in like the the 5th or 6th season it's like, I guess we're going through the fucking Skittergate, guys.
I do want to say for the record, this is one of my favorite parts about Rats of the Walls, is the Skittergate that's there. I do want to say for the record, there's not a Skittergate in every adventure, but there are some adventures that have Skittergates. And you guys actually learned quite a lot about the rats, from Rakik, the bound and amputated rat at the very end that was chained to the wall. He told you a bunch of like lore stuff that you didn't even get when you encountered the Skaven and Heretic heroes. So that was sweet.
Yeah, no, I mean, I feel like that's a cool meta story to get to eventually, right? Like I do enjoy this kind of like, oh,
yeah,
there are all these shared adventures in this larger world. Eventually we'll get to unraveling some of the larger mysteries, and even if like, theoretically no single character understands the full picture, us as kind of players do. I think that works. We just gotta.
Yeah, I mean that's also happening across sort of other angles too, like with the Tomb Kings in Heretic Heroes. That's like Shajarok and Marn are two completely different characters, but Rachel saw the Tomb Kings in both locations, and they function essentially identically. And I wanted the same thing to be true for the rats. The Skaven here had the same mechanics as the Skaven in Heretic Heroes, even though none of the characters were the same, right? Though that does kind of put it in a weird thing. It's like a weird metagame kind of like piece of knowledge, right? Or like, I mean, I'm sure, I don't know, there's the whole purple moth of it as well.
Purple moth?
That's maybe a Rachel thing.
The purple moth is what Anatarian referenced when I spoke to him in his mind. He was like, the purple moth is doing it. And also like, I think Rakik also referenced the purple moth. Whatever the source of the madness was, it was some creature that represented itself as a purple moth.
What would you have done if we were just like, fuck it, we're leaving town, we're going through the Skittergate?
We would have done the Skittergate. That would have been, we just would have swapped into doing the Skittergate, and we would have just seen where that takes us, I guess.
I do know the answer to this is there is a campaign on the campaign pitch me, which is
Dreadfire and
Warpstone.
Warpstone. Yeah. It's kind of like a secret, it's like a secret level or something. Like, it would just literally be, we are abandoning this campaign entirely and hard veering into Dreadfire and Warpstone, which actually would have been wild if you had done it, because hypothetically speaking, Reactor 10 the ritual would have fired and Krahz-shek would have been destroyed in the process. Because like, you guys leaving kind of means that there's nobody to save the day in a way, which is wild set of circumstances, but I think that's cool.
Would have had to have popped back out under the prison from the first campaign. Figured out how to.
Yeah. Yeah, that was like my other big thing, because in the prison you guys got a little clue as to what the rats were doing, and this one you obviously Keek told you a little bit more kind of thing, but like the the idea that the skitter gates are connecting places underneath, in the under empire of the empire, I think is very sweet, and I'm interested to see where, I don't know, where it pops up again.
I do
This
like
one it was more obvious, but
I do like the idea that like whenever we do this, the Skittergate campaign, that like 4 Skittergates in an area, like people, 4 characters from different campaigns all step through, and like, huh, who are you? It's like, who are you? What
you know what gave me the idea for the skitter gates, actually, talking about WoW, is the Emerald Nightmare portals in World of Warcraft. That's what I was thinking when I was thinking about the skitter gates, which first happened in because I put Dreadfire and Warpstone on the list, and I said to myself, it would actually be kind of sweet if there were other skitter gates in, like, hidden in sort of things, and I wrote a couple of them down. And I was thinking about that thing of like, oh, there are those portals in Ashenvale and the hinterlands or whatever, and they're all kind of like linked together. That was my, I don't know, that was like the animating thought behind it.
Very cool. Yeah.
I also really
Really,
love the
Jared
like
is very interested in Skittergate workings. He would have gone through.
yeah. He actually probably would have had a pretty good time on the other end of the Skittergate, because the Dreadfire and Warpstone is like a sort of like a survival campaign. You're super behind enemy lines. You have to scrounge for food and that kind of stuff. There's not a lot of safety in the same way that, like, I don't know,
That's
rats
it.
in the walls.
We got to go home every night, right, and sleep, right, like, and not
Yeah.
have to worry about getting murdered in our beds, type of deal.
Yeah, you guys are pretty safe from that side of things, I guess. When I originally scoped it out, like I said, I was thinking about it as 3 dungeons. It was, the first one is the Warren, so that's when you fight all the rats and you figure out that there are like the orders are coming out, and that pretty clearly leads you sort of towards Casca and Claudius. And the idea was that it was probably the monastery, but it also could have been the Quencher hideout where you're kind of fighting through. And that, you guys did that script read in the final episode, but that's supposed to happen at the end of the second dungeon, and then that leads you to Reactor 10, because it's, they have a third person who's a part of this conspiracy, but he's betrayed all of them. He's fucking crazy, and he's trying to blow up the entire city because of, whatever, madness. I don't know. There's something about that structure I think is cool, but I also actually quite liked the way that it played out at the end. I think it was sweet to do sort of a Casca Claudius mini boss fight into Anatarian right afterwards.
It was definitely explosive. Definitely an interesting series of encounters, especially given, like, I definitely felt the kind of like, oh, we need to like push to get this done because the clock's ticking type of deal.
That was the big thing that I wanted to add. I felt like because I had originally scoped it out where when I was putting kind of the conspiracy together, I got it around the 2 brothers first. And then I was sort of like, well, is that the climax, that you just find the 2 brothers? Like, that's kind of lame and boring. And that's when I just went off on this whole tangent with sort of Anatarian as a way to sort of make the stakes much bigger. Oh, you have 2 brothers who are trying to kind of disrupt the political order of the city, but they are working with this third person who is a wild card, and it turns out that he is crazy and he's going to try and, blow up the city instead. That was, I don't know, that was definitely kind of the next piece. Though I did quite like the boss fight. I think the Casca Claudius boss fight was very fun, where it was going up and down on the pillars. That was a very cute, set of mechanics.
I agree.
Which was not how I had originally expected in the other one. It was supposed to just be that Casca was at the top of there were just a bunch of pillars in the monastery, and Casca was swooping down from them. You guys didn't really see all that much of this, but the monks had this flight mechanic, and but then I got the idea of they're pistons and they go up and down. I thought that was like that. Oh, this is cool.
Yeah, that would have been cool if we had, like, done an encounter with it, and then, like, the twist on it is that they're moving pistons.
Yeah, the original one was Claudius had that big hammer. He had the smog hammer. The original way that I had designed it, which was before I even statted it out, because almost always when I do this stuff, I just kind of jot down a couple of notes. I was like, Claudius is breaking the pillars with his hammer, and if they break all of the pillars, Casca has nowhere to be safe, and then they can kill Casca. Casca's pretty weak. Claudius is pretty tanky, and it's this kind of thing of like the brothers are working against each other. Obviously, it didn't quite work out that way in the end because of the different sort of set of mechanics, but whatever.
Yeah.
We kind of fucked Casca up.
You did fuck Casca up. That was
Like
true.
everyone just kind of, no one said anything. We just all kind of unspokenly focused Casca down, and he just kind of got Green Lantern.
Yeah, that's true.
I also think part of it was that like that we rolled the like double range modifier, and that just like made like Casca's thing is like being slippery, and when like your ranged characters can like hit him from wherever, then it's not really like it's hard to deal with that. How do you feel about that mechanic in retrospect? Do you think it accomplished what you wanted it to?
Oh, the Arcane Surge! I love
Yeah.
the Arcane Surge.
Okay.
I want to do it 100 more times. In my mind, I had replaced the. I was thinking about the. We were just talking about the tension pool at the time, and I think you had said something to me on the cast about like, oh, I want the tension pool to be a to be like a freeform thing, which I think is correct, kind of in retrospect. But I was because at the time I was building out what the complication table inside of the reactor looked like, and I just kind of threw it out because what I was building was the tension pool to do the arcane surges. But I sort of just decided that actually I just wanted to do those straight up, and we don't need to do the tension pool for any of this. We can just at the beginning of every turn, a thing happens that is warping the nature of reality all around. The one thing we talked about this a little bit. The one thing that was in there that you guys didn't quite key in on was there was one anomaly that let you heal, and my intention was that you guys could heal up between every encounter with it. Right? You just kind of go, we wait until we get this thing, and then we just pump ourselves to full. Right? And I would have said, great answer, but because I was like, how do I keep them topped off in a 9-room dungeon? That was like part of my thinking with all of that.
That makes sense.
But I also think I just didn't really understand Pathfinder, because Pathfinder makes it kind of easy to heal up between encounters.
If you have somebody with medicine and someone with a healing kit, yeah, like that's once you hit like mid levels, you could. It's a little bit harder to do it in between encounters with like basically the way it ends up shaking out is like in a high pressure situation like the one we were in, it would have been harder to do even with like the feats to do it. But like if you could spend like an hour hanging out or a couple hours hanging out, it would be fine. And by the time you're mid-level, it's usually like pretty trivial to heal to full every night. Which is also kind of, that's the thing you can do. Like the thing that's part of the base mechanics of 5e, and you kind of have to build to it. I would actually like to see, DM advice in the books be like, you should probably encourage someone to be able to do this, because I feel like it's kind of balanced around somebody using medicine to heal everybody to full every night.
Yeah, I tried to make some sort of like weird off healer thing. Like my plan was like my bloodline magic, I guess I'd never really mentioned. I was a undead sorcerer necromancer type of thing. And my plan was to use my blood magic to turn people undead and then heal them. And I was going to be like a pseudo support DPS. But that became incredibly unwieldy once I actually learned how like action economy works in Pathfinder. And so I ended up not touching my blood magic spell thingy at all, and I didn't use like quite a few of the spells I picked because they just ended up not being, very applicable for the situations. And I was always scared you were going to start rolling the tension pool if we stopped moving, so I didn't even think about just stopping outside of combat and saying, "Hey, does anyone have the ability to heal?" My thing was when we were out, I assumed we don't have safety. We spend 10 minutes healing and we're screwed.
Yeah, I mean, it probably would have just added a dice to the tension pool or a die to the tension pool, but I don't think that's all that lethal in like aggregate, but it feels lethal in the moment, right? Like you're so incentivized to not put things in the tension pool.
Not only that, but like it is kind of like, I feel like it's up in the air whether or not like you would consider waiting in the reactor that's in the process of trying to explode itself, you know, being a thing that rolls a tension pool or not, right? Like whether it's risky,
Yeah.
inherently risky enough to, you know, immediately roll a tension pool on weight.
You know, it's funny though. In my first spec, Anatarian did not end up this way. He ended up about kind of controlling the reactor. But in my first spec of Anatarian, actually, his whole mechanic was about turning the arcane surge against you guys, which was like he could trigger additional arcane surges, and then he could reverse. I called it reverse polarity, which was one action that he could use to make the benefit for you guys into a detriment. So instead of getting double range, you'd get halved range. Instead of having the heal, you had to take actions to prevent damage. I don't know. I scoped it all out. I actually kind of didn't like it. I thought it sort of sucked in a way, which is why I remade the whole fight to be about him trying to kind of pump up the reactor in order to make the reaction happen, but then also draw down off of the reactor in order to kill you guys, which ended up pretty great. I think that part was pretty sweet.
Yeah, I think that ended up working out. And I think the damage aspect of it, like if you had done like those were like that reversal type of mechanic can feel really bad, especially if it's kind of like one action is kind of like free, right? Especially without a save type of deal. Which maybe would have been the way to solve that, right? Is like on you know, you get to save against the reverse polarity, and that can
yeah, that probably would have made sense. He was weirdly action intensive because he had to buff. I mean, once we got on the reactor, I guess I wasn't doing any of the reverse polarity stuff. That was when he was just sort of teleporting around and shooting you guys with the big beam, which I also love deeply. And then he summoned the guy, the frayed rage, the big bad guy, and then the feedback damage that came from those. I loved those guys because I thought of Anatarian and I scoped him out to be pretty weak, pretty glass cannon. It was easy to hit him, easy to kill him, kind of thing. But like he puts out a bunch of damage and he's very slippery. And he has this ability, like if his reaction is up, he is going to zoop to the other, to the other end of the platform. And I think you guys actually tactically really pinned him down, which was excellent. At the end there, I was like, he just has no good options. He has no good place to sort of go and be safe anymore, which I think is kind of the perfect end to a boss fight like that. Because you sort of had outsmarted him.
Yeah, no, I agree. I will say I was so excited to just like run up and like shove him into the lava, and then he like zipped away. I was like, God,
He does have a fly speed, so he would not
Okay.
have been shovable, unfortunately.
Okay.
But whatever.
No, but he zooped away, so it's not even like it felt like that, right? It just felt like, okay,
Yeah.
of course he had a plan for that, right? Like he's, I was like, oh, but he doesn't realize that I can just like,
Well, you did it the first time. That's why I gave him the fly speed. With the first time, you repositioned them into the lava, and I was like,
That was
all right, you got me on that one. Good job. Right. Excellent. Right. But then the second time, that was when I wanted to play it back. I was very sad. One of the things that made me a little sad about the control rods encounter, where like you fought through that grid with all of the lines, and there were ethereals, and they got to do the kamehamehas down the line. Just one of my favorite things I've ever been able to do.
That was pretty good.
Yeah, having I think the evokers have the ability to teleport their friends, and so like he teleported his friend 20 feet, and then his friend shot the beam. That was great. But then the back end of that was trying to push down the control rods with the body. In my mind, it was you had to kill the Dragonborn and then throw the Dragonborn corpses onto the control rods in order to push them all down. But hypothetically, you could have done it with anything, right? Like if it was just kind of heavy enough. I'm a little sad we didn't get to run back that encounter. I love the idea of like doing 2 encounters in the same room, but with like different mechanics, a different, set of enemies, all of that.
like Castle whatever, like the it's
Castle Nathria?
yeah Castle Nathria, where we do like
First boss and the like 5th boss.
yeah exactly
Or
that.
like 6th boss. Whatever.
Yeah,
you call it.
Shriekwing and Sludgefist. That's true. That's not what I was thinking, but that is exactly what I'm describing. Yeah.
One of the greatest bosses ever made.
Sludgewing
Yeah, and then there was
was-
also
Sludgefist was
the
a good
water
boss.
coolant puzzle which I made easier at the last second because it was the end of the night, and I was afraid you guys weren't going to get it and you fuck it up. And so I gave you the first thing for free, in that which was the session before, I guess, where you fought the quenchers in the room, and then you had to do the thing where you put the stuff in the right order. And I was just really worried that you guys were not going to get that puzzle. Though it wouldn't have been the end of the world, it just would have made Anatari harder because he would have started with a more powerful reactor and he would have been able to blow it immediately. That was the way that I was thinking about that was, you know, if you failed the control rods, if you failed the coolant puzzle, right? When you go fight Anatarian, the ritual is in a much more dangerous kind of place, and he would have like started with buffs that would have been able to just like, you know, he wouldn't have had to charge it. Basically, he could have just drawn down.
Interesting.
Yeah, if he got one more round of that off, I definitely would have died that encounter, or at least gone down.
Yeah.
That is interesting. I feel like the right answer there is to like, you know, signpost that's like the stakes a little bit more, right? Like, like signpost that like if you screw this up, you know, it's not the end of the world, but it is going to, you know, have consequences. You know, and Eternal will remember that type of deal, right? Like,
Oh, I thought that
Yeah,
signpost did well enough.
okay.
You know, it seemed like the way he described it, if we fuck this up, you know, we've missed a key thing and something bad will happen later down the line.
Yeah, technically you guys could have fucked up all 3 of the wings. We didn't get to the 3rd wing. You could have fucked up all 3 of the wings and still had the chance to fight Anatarian. But fighting Anatarian with the reactor starting at 0 versus the reactor starting at 2, 4, or 6, like I think if the reactor starts at 6, you guys might have just wiped. Because like it just means that he can do so much stuff. He never has to burn any actions on charging the reactor. Whereas in the final boss fight, when it started at 0, he had to burn, I think his first 2 actions were hitting the reactor and like prepping the beam or something like that. And it's like that push and pull of him charging up the reactor and then pulling magic out of the reactor to do damage and trigger arcane surges and stuff like that. Like I wonder how lethal that encounter could have ended up if the circumstances were a little bit different.
What would the 3rd wing had been?
The 3rd wing had this whole thing that was basically rot damage. The idea for the 3rd wing was there was sort of arcane energy spewing out of these capacitors, and the thing that you were trying to do was fight through ethereals and quenchers, and basically the quenchers and the ethereals are fighting, but there's all of this sort of rot damage going out, and so there's a lot of cover mechanics. There's this whole thing about there were these like panels that could raise and lower, and so you could walk up, raise a panel, hide behind it, and you would not take the arcane damage, but otherwise you would. And then you had to get up and you had to turn some valves or something like that in order to actually shut that rot damage kind of off. So yeah, that's what that was scoped at. Part of it was, and I think I was maybe a little too ambitious with this, like part of this was that I wanted to give a unique mechanical identity to all 3 of the quenchers, the monks, and the ethereals. And I think the ethereals got there, but you guys only fought the quenchers the first time and you never fought the monks. So like there wasn't that opportunity to kind of like explain how they work mechanically. Like I don't even know, did any of you guys get hit by the reaction dragon breath? Did that even trigger ever from the quenchers? Do you remember?
We definitely got hit by a breath because there was a cone
Okay.
breath that it was like Druidbull's pet, one of my pets, and then maybe Aethid?
Yeah, that makes sense to me. That is their whole mechanic was they have AOO dragon breath, which is, you know, anytime anybody like leaves a threatened square, they do a big, you know, AOE dragon breath kind of thing. So they kind of lock you down a little bit. Because you can't sort of slip through combat, but I don't know. We didn't super get there. But the ethereal stuff I think was that stuff was pretty clear, right? Like once you saw the beam, you understood the beam. And that was like 3
Yeah.
encounters of sort of the beam stuff. And then also being able to see the teleport. Like I think Anatarian, if Anatarian just did the teleport thing that he did to Mango at the very end, it would have felt deeply unfair if you hadn't had seen the Swift Blades in the first encounter do that exact same thing. Do you know what I mean? It was kind of like telegraphed in a way.
Sure.
That's what I was trying to go for, I guess.
Yeah, that's fair.
If so, obviously stuff got cut because we had a hard out. Our friend Lokix here cannot play on Mondays for the summer, and so if you could go back and like with hindsight, knowing how long we took on things, would you change anything, remove anything around so that we got more done somehow? And then do you have any clue as to how you would do that?
There's a couple of
Or how you
regrets,
will
I
do
guess
that next year.
Yeah, true. One of the things is that I think I would have had you guys fight the Eshin assassin in the first session. I had actually scoped this out already, but I decided not to do it because I don't know. I just kind of didn't want to. I just didn't want to. But I think it would have been better if you had to fight the Eshin clan assassin in the first session and then fight him again as the boss of the Rat War, which is essentially what like what he was. You guys also killed him extremely well. He had like a whole bunch of mechanics I don't even think you saw that were around the like warp poisoning people and the poison, the poison globes. Like I guess you guys were actually pretty close to wiping. I think there was a lot of damage that he put out, but you pinned him down pretty effectively, and kind of killed him. His whole thing was about like wrapping people up with the Eshin clan wraps and then stabbing them because that put them off guard to his sneak attack, which did like gajillions damage, right?
Didn't he do that to at least one of us? I could have sworn he got that off on at least
Yeah,
one.
I dropped in that fight.
That's right.
Oh, really? Yeah, you did.
Yeah,
Okay,
I was
maybe I'm
downed in that fight.
misremembering.
No, we did. We definitely blitzed him in like 2 rounds, maybe 3, but he got some good stuff. I think you got like either really good rolls off or Azid was already low.
Mhm. Yeah, I actually really loved the Rat Warren. I think the Rat Warren was a really sweet dungeon, like kind of front to back. Because there was the whole thing. There was the whole thing with the rats spawning mechanic in that
Oh,
third
that
room. Oh god, that shit was the greatest.
like spawn extra rats on accident. You said because
I
you
did
did it
accidentally.
different.
And I don't even remember why, but you did fight all through because Rachel made 20 of them, like 20
Yeah.
of the little rat tokens. And I was like, there's no way they're going to 20, but I think we did. I think we saw every single one of those rats come
Like
through.
every time you went to spawn them, I think you rolled like 2 or 3 dice. You had like a bunch spawn at each hole or something. I don't know. It was just
Yeah,
you
it
look
was like
next
I don't.
time.
I'd have to look at my notes. I can't remember what the mechanic was, but it was like all the 6 different holes, and it was like every time you killed a rat, it put a thing in a pool, and then I rolled the pool, and then I rolled again to see which of the holes they kind of came out of or whatever, and it just ended up mathematically there were more rats than I expected, kind of going through. But once you guys figured it out, that was pretty great. That was like that was a sweet moment of blowing up the warpstone fuel or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what else I would have done. I did have stuff for Crusaders because there was a chance you guys were going to fight the Crusaders or you're going to fight the Dread Reckoning elves. Was like the only other kind of encounters I had statted up, but that was part of that was that like the tensions between those two was like the underlying. It was like another underlying thread that was about kind of adding stakes, and by the time it had erupted into kind of like full-blown gang war, you guys like it just would have ruined the pacing if you guys had actually like done a random encounter fighting a bunch of Crusaders who don't matter on the way to the reactor. Do you know what I mean? And so we just kind of skipped through all of that. I think if I had had another 6 sessions or whatever, there would have been a little subplot around that.
Yeah, that would have made sense. It's kind of like you guys failed to prevent the race war from breaking out in the flows, so now you have to deal. Now you have to fight your way through it to get to the reactor type of deal. But obviously, like you said, it would have broken the flow, and we were running out of time pretty quickly.
Yeah. Also, just going to Caius, I just didn't expect it. That it's so stupid for me to even say this, but it just never occurred to me at any moment that you would go, I just go to the mayor and I tell him about this, and I was sort of like, yeah, I guess so. I guess you can do that. You know, there were a couple of moments that were sort of like that. Another one was with the murder weapon. Like, I knew the very first artifact I scoped out, and I actually scoped out 3 artifacts for each of you guys. The very first artifact I scoped out was, I'm going to give Dick the the warp stone dagger, which is the murder weapon. I thought that was so cool. Oh man, and you could do this thing and activate it and whatever. And Dick, and it was just like, why would he just turn it? I was like, yeah, I don't know, man. Why wouldn't he? It just didn't even occur to me that you would actually just turn that in as evidence, which it fucking is. Yeah, there's a lot of that. Yeah. Yeah, you missed out on Apocalypse. I did not scope out any of the artifacts after a while because I was just like, it doesn't make sense. There was a set of 1 artifact for each of you in Origins. And the ones that were in the monastery were all WoW references. And so one of them was Apocalypse, like the unholy DK weapon, which I thought was sweet.
That does sound sweet.
Next winter on some Derps play D&D.
The journey into the Skaven.
Into the Skittergate.
Yeah.
The Skittergate.
All right, well, we're at the hour mark. Is there any other things that people wanted to talk about? The other players, do you have any questions or things you want to throw out before we move to, how our weeks have been going?
I love you guys. Thank you for playing in my game. I deeply love Ceran. I'm sorry, Lokix, that we did this instead of going back to Shadow of the Dragon Queen, because I know you want to go back to.
It's fine. It's fine. This was fun. I think definitely next time it'll be easy. I'll have since I'll actually know if we end up doing, Pathfinder again.
Yeah.
I'll definitely have I'll be keeping the same character going forward, so it'll be much easier to get into it and know what the heck I'm doing.
Yeah. Do you guys want to keep doing Pathfinder? Like, what is your after two rounds of Pathfinder for some of you? Do you guys want to keep going with it, or is there a desire to go back to 5e?
I'd prefer to stick with Pathfinder.
What do you like about Pathfinder?
There's a lot of options, man. There's a lot of interesting options you can put together. I don't think I did as great a job with this character, but I really liked the way I had built Rusty out.
Yeah, one of the things I really like about doing these mini arcs is that you have a lot of opportunity to test shit out and like abandon it if it's just like isn't cool or doesn't work the way that you think it does. Which is funny because years ago I think we did an episode on campaign mini arcs and how I made a pitch that was basically like the perfect campaign is like a 6-session very contained story, beginning and end right there, you know what I mean? And that's sort of what we're doing here. And I feel like I'm seeing that like play out in practice.
Rachel Lokix, how do you feel about BF2E?
Rachel, you can go first if you want.
I don't have a strong opinion one way or the other.
How very neutral of you.
Rachel abstains. I don't know. I think I'd be fine to I would be fine continuing with Pathfinder and Zareth. We would definitely probably defer to what the group would want to do.
Yeah, I think
know,
we might be
people.
going to 5e. We're gonna have to figure that out because Ceran's playing in the next one, and he did not like Pathfinder 2e as much on the first go round, and I wonder if we will end up going back to D&D 5e next time. Lou asks in the chat, do you think you'd consider other systems for campaigns that may be less combat oriented? I absolutely would, but I also just feel like nothing is quite as good at capturing kind of the fantasy elements as D&D and Pathfinder. It'd be really hard for me to see a good system for Ceran in particular as a world that is outside of kind of the realm of those two.
Do you like 13th age or
Yeah, I was thinking about that. I mean, like technically, you could maybe do Zweihander, which I think would kind of be cool, or like maybe you just do Warhammer Fantasy, which I also think would kind of be cool. You could maybe get away with that, but yeah.
I don't know if like Warhammer Fantasy or Zweihander is less combat oriented though, right? Like
Yeah, that's true. It's not that it's less combat or like I don't know. It's
just
tough.
different.
It's just different.
7th
I guess you
C,
could just do
maybe?
like hard GURPS. Yeah, I guess 7th C. But even all of those I feel like are so rooted in their worlds that it's kind
Yeah.
of hard to disentangle that, you know.
7th C wouldn't really work.
7th C has so much stuff that's about like the lore of that world. Warhammer has so much stuff in there that's the lore of that world, right? And part of like what I'm trying to do systems agnostic, like you can pop between D&D 5e and Pathfinder, but it has definitely caused issues because like Pathfinder has a whole additional school of magic that D&D doesn't with occult magic, but like occult magic is definitely a thing in Ceran, but how do you represent that in 5e? I don't know. It's complicated, right? Like yeah.
I will say I still don't really understand the non-combat aspects of Pathfinder. Like the when to use what lore and like, I understand that Josh was using esoteric wrong. I don't know how. I don't know why it was wrong. I don't know how
Yeah,
it's
I
supposed
definitely
to
think that
function.
using esoteric lore wrong definitely changed the nature of the game
Yup.
kind of heavily.
Yeah,
pretty heavily.
You're using it kind of like Bardic lore, which I don't think is the end of the world. Like Bardic lore, I know is tied to, I think it's the Polymath Muse. It's one of the specific muses, but like that's kind of like I think what you were using esoteric lore like. So it's not super breaking, but it's most of it's just kind of skill checks, right? Like the skill checks are actually very similar between the two systems. It's just kind of what the modifiers are. Like the modifiers get much higher in Pathfinder because there's basically a much larger differentiation between a first level character and a 10th level character than in 5e, right? Like it's like that's literally like a 10 to 12 points swing.
The thing I really love about Pathfinder is the crit thing. I think that 10 up crit is so awesome. It just makes for really interesting kind of dynamic encounters, right? Like the boss critically failed on your save or suck spell, right? He rolled a nat 2 and it's just like that's brutal, right? And I just think that stuff is my favorite part about Pathfinder. I've actually come around quite a lot to Pathfinder, I guess I would say. I was a little bit down on Pathfinder after Heretic Heroes. I didn't quite get it, but after the second game, I definitely feel myself intuiting it much better.
I think one of the weaknesses is because it is supposed to be a crunchier system, is there are little corners of things that like you don't quite realize. Like this is something that came up. It's like the incapacitation trait, which is meant to keep save or suck spells from killing bosses. Really, right? Like it will take out like a mook, but like probably won't take out a big boss. And if you're not really aware of that, or like even came up here, right? Like I'm pretty sure Rachel just like missed a line about how it's called Courageous Anthem in PF2E about how that works, and that probably would have made Sophia work a little bit better if we had caught that and figured out how to get that put together.
Yeah, in a weird way, the simplicity of the rules sort of like makes that whole thing work easier in D&D 5e because everything is kind of just like it's like built in an intuitive way, kind of. So yeah, I feel that for sure.
I definitely understand. Also, it's the one that everybody knows, right? Like there's less, like there's essentially a lot of since I'm the one that knows the system the best, I'm the one that has to catch these things, right? Like,
yeah.
Which is its its own ball of wax. But obviously, I like PF2E.
I'd definitely be down to continue in PF2E. But if Ryan is very against it, we just have to figure out, like, how would we turn this necromancer dude this abomination that I've created in 2E into anything in resembling that in
It would
D&D 5e.
require a custom subclass is the way that I've been thinking about it. I wrote a custom subclass for Rachel and Warren in another game. We're doing the Scarecrow King. And I would probably do something similar, right? Like I would just have to find, I guess it would be Necromancer or Warlock maybe. It would be like a Necromancer subclass to the Warlock. And I think it would just kind of have to be that in order to hit the same kind of like flavor, I guess I would say, of how things work.
Yeah.
Yeah. Rachel, are you satisfied with the lore drops that came out over the course of Rats in the Walls as kind of the preeminent Ceran lore master?
Yes.
What do you feel like is the most interesting thing that you want to track down, get more answers on?
What's the fucking purple moth? What's
Oh,
like?
yeah.
What's with the white deer and what's with the purple moth? What are these fucking animals doing? What are they about?
There's a whole thing to what they're about.
I don't know if you can
I'm
hear,
not gonna
but
tell you.
Mr. Collins wants to know about the purple moth too.
Yeah, and the cataclysm and everything. Are we ever going to do 7th again? Yes, in after Scarecrow King we're going back to 7th Expedition. So I'm very excited to return to 7th Expedition. That's also on the Wednesday night game. 7th Expedition is also like a truly wild, different beast because it's like that is not an episodic game. That campaign is gigantic, and I don't know. I'm excited to see more of that. One of the things that Rachel and I were talking about is adding campaign pitches for Kaya, for the Cursed Continent of Kaya, because they cleared, Kaya has regions, and they cleared the first region, the Eastern Forest. And so I was like, what would it look like to put a campaign pitch there that's kind of in the aftermath of, the 7th Expedition players doing a thing? I don't know. I might add it. I haven't added the campaign pitch for tomorrow when we do the next big round of picks.
I also just want to say, as far as lore that affected me in this campaign, is that I created for the Scarecrow King a Everflame Crusader as my character, just because I thought the Everflame Crusade in this game was cool and interesting, and I love him.
Oof. And Everflame Crusader as a Hell Knight, I think would be awesome. Like using the Hell Knight mechanics for that. Maybe it doesn't quite hit right, but I feel like it's in like the right kind of zone.
Yeah, I mean the Everflame Crusade is really dependent. Like obviously in the Crush the Crusade thing, they are the bad guys, right? Like there's the Scarlet Monastery, or whatever, the Scarlet Crusade kind of thing. But like in other circumstances, they're the good guys. They're the Argent Crusade kind of.
Same thing with the Hell Knights.
Yeah, I think I don't know. I think that's sweet. I love the Everflame Crusade. I also love that you guys are getting like more kind of tastes of sort of this lore. Even little stuff like Caius Volturius. He's he fought in Krahz 9 Peaks, which is another campaign pitch that you guys can do. I actually think if we do Krahz 9 Peaks, I will maybe just run Pathfinder 2e gear as is. And see, because that campaign is supposed to be like very crunchy, and I just wonder if I could do it with like random tables or something kind of like that, with like striking runes and all of the rest of it. But
I will say I don't think you lose a lot by doing automatic bonus progression, because it just kind of strips out like it systematizes kind of like very basic upgrades, right? Like this is like crests in WoW, right? Like it's not like you're getting a super ton of flavor out of it. It's like you're increasing the number by 1 on like a set pattern, and it can be neat if like you got your first +2 striking rune. That goes to the fighter, right? Like, and and it moves some of that stuff around, but like, it also kind of locks you into, like, it is hard to pick up, like, if you find, like, a spear that you like, but you've been using this sword, and it's got all your nice runes on it, you have to, like, spend, like, however much time to move the rune over, and it kind of makes that flexibility less so, for better or for worse. My opinion is that APP is fine, kind of, but, if you would like
Yeah,
to
I also
try it.
could see a version of it where it's about like the true magic items that you can like invest in and all that kind of
Sure.
stuff, which I think would be kind of interesting and fair. I don't know.
That's fair.
We'll have to see when you guys choose that game, maybe or maybe not, kind of thing.
Mm.
Anyway, but speaking about crests and WoW, it occurs to me that all of our friends are big WoW players. We've been talking about WoW on the podcast a lot. How are you guys feeling about? How are you guys feeling about Midnight? Do you have any deep Midnight hot takes you wanna put in the some Derps Play Games podcast?
Easiest season ever, but I'm having a lot of fun.
I do think that there is something weird and kind of terrible about that. Like I'm thinking about uh I'm thinking about what Ghostcrawler said about Cataclysm heroic dungeons quite a lot, which is in Wrath of the Lich King, heroic dungeons were very easy and people loved doing them. But the feedback on the forums always said that they should be harder. So in Cataclysm, they made them much harder. And then nobody did heroics, and nobody ever did heroics ever again. They just stopped people from doing heroic dungeons because they made them harder in Cataclysm, and it was just like this thorn in the gameplay team's side. And
You're roboting hard.
Yeah,
for
you're
me, at
roboting
least.
hard, buddy.
Oh no! Oh no! My internet. I was just thinking having this an easy season is maybe getting me to play it a lot more, which sort of sucks and is bad in my brain, but also I like it because I just want to play a lot of Warcraft.
I haven't really got into dungeons yet. I mean to, but I haven't got it. Plus, you kind of need a group of people for that kind of shit.
Yeah. I like that there's like so much stuff to do that if you want to do it all, it's kind of onerous. So it's like, when I cap out hunts, I will probably do them a little bit less, at least one less a week, and then like do the the party event a little bit more, and maybe the Void Storm event, which I haven't done since the first week ever again.
Yeah, that event fucking sucks. I keep talking about how much I dislike that event. I haven't done any of my world event stuff this week just because I've been super busy, which is not great, but whatever. The hunts are
Yeah,
fun though.
I also kind of fell off on the world event train. I was doing them. I want a lot of the cosmetics that are tied to like prey, for example, but
Mhm.
there are so many things I'd rather be doing than listening to what's his face yell at me to kill things. Well, like honestly, I enjoyed the system up until I hit nightmare mode and unlocked one affix. The the mob that if it comes near you, it nukes you. That thing, I don't know if it was just my experience with it, but it would spawn like as I was flying away. And so like I wouldn't be able is the one you had to interrupt. And so it would nuke me midair. And then I just have this debuff that's killing this dot that's killing me that I have no or like he would yell at me to kill something as I'm taking off. So I'd land and I'd have to find something either easy to kill or like a critter on the ground. Because that
I am
works, by the
so
way.
bad at that. The killing the boss really sucks, or killing the mob rather, like really sucks. Because a lot of it, it's like I'm flying in the middle in midair, and then he tells you to kill something, and I go, oh god, and I have to, panic land and pop combustion because I'm not going to kill anything quickly enough if I don't have my major cooldown. And then you get ambushed and you're like, well, I just blew combustion on this fucking dog and this guy is going to kick my teeth in. Like,
This is maybe the one time where Monk has like, the upper hand. I'm like, what do you mean? I just land and touch a death and it's great, right? Like,
oh, kill me. I hate you so much. I never
Like-
thought about that, but that makes so much sense. Yeah.
You'll laugh at this one, buddy, because you love minorly inconveniencing your friends.
I do love minorly inconveniencing my friends.
You know you have to interrupt it, right? One of the
Mhm.
main instincts I have to interrupt things is hitting it with a death grip. You don't want that mob to touch you.
Amazing.
I can't how many times I death gripped that stupid mob into me and nuked myself.
That is actually so fucking funny.
Because I'll
Yeah.
use my interrupt at like the ambush, and then I don't have an interrupt, so I'm like, oh, I'll death grip it to cancel the cast.
I
Oh
will
no,
say one
I'm
thing that's very
fucking
cool is that when you're playing a Sun Fury Fire Mage, you summon a Phoenix when you're combusting, and your Phoenix automatically casts Spell Steal on like
Oh.
valid targets, and so it will kill that guy automatically if you're inside of your combustion window when it spawns. It'll just immediately target it with a spell steal, which I just love from my little Phoenix pal. You know, we get along great. But I definitely feel this thing about Nightmare Prey. It's just like a little too annoying for me to like. It is raising something that I want to be hanging out down here in kind of my subliminal, you know, like I'm not thinking too hard. I'm just kind of chilling, and raising it a little bit too much up here where I have to like really actually think about it and kind of focus on it for
Yeah.
my liking.
Having
See-
to think about it. Like I was doing that and I was enjoying hard mode because I would just do it while I do my other crap in the world. And
Yeah.
it was fine. And the dude would show up and be like, oh, an extra mob here, I'll throw a trap at him.
Hmm.
Or some bullshit. But then it just got so much more complicated and ugh.
I feel that I have been enjoying Prey, but I have also been like my nature is to like focus on it, right? Like, you know, last week Buddy on the podcast mentioned something about like, oh, or not last week, but 2 weeks ago, like, you know, oh, you can you know, pick up all of the party quests and do that while you do your Prey. And I was like, I'll take your word for it. And then I tried to do this week, I'm like, what? I don't get Prey completion for this, right? Like, you know, I did it during other things, but like, I don't know. I've also kind of gotten it down to a science. The fastest way, I think, actually to pop the final encounter is to find an area with a bunch of the traps and just disarm the traps. I think if you disarm
It
like
is, yeah.
a dozen
Yeah.
of them, it's like
Once
Like
I
Lou said
figured
in
that
the
out,
chat,
it
you
is
just
it. Yeah,
spend 5
Lou
minutes
mentioned it in the
done.
chat. Spent 6 minutes gathering traps. Once that happened for me, I was like, "Fuck! I am the water, and I have found the crack." And
Yeah.
that sucks because like
That's when the
if I
system broke for me
yeah,
too.
it's kind of when the system broke a little bit, and I kind of have to train myself not to, because I like Prey as a thing that takes, well, I'm doing 30 minutes worth of, you know, Sartheral's party favors or whatever.
Yeah.
It's a thing that just pops up and kind of fucks with you, messes with you a tiny bit, right? Um, yeah, I wish.
yeah. But you know, it's I don't know. I like the kind of like back and forth of like you do the Prey, you get your thing that summons the boss and delves, and you go to your delves. This is like my personal, you know, farm out my vault slots things. Is I do my Prey and I do my delves, and my world, you know, my bottom tier of delves is all, you know, 2 tier 11s and a tier 8, and I'm happy.
Are you enjoying the delves this season? Do you think that they're sweet delves?
I like that there's more variety than War Within. Like there's
Mhm.
Yeah.
the individual delves I feel like are a lot different from each other. And I feel like I'm getting to that point where I'm like starting to master some of them. Which I like, but I don't like so much else in WoW. It is on farm now, right? Like, you know, and it only gets easier, so
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the things I think is weird about delves is they give you myth crests, but there's actually no way to get mythic level stuff from delves. You know, like you can get myth crests in the gilded chest or whatever.
Yeah.
And last expansion you needed those in order to cap out your hero tier gear, but this expansion you don't. You can just do it all with hero, which I was a little like, "Oh, wait, why myth
crafting.
crest?"
That's what I'm holding
Yeah,
them for.
just turn
Crafting.
to the crafting,
Oh.
yeah.
That's actually clever. I didn't think about that. I hate
Yeah.
the ones that require
Um,
multiple interrupts or the boss gets turbo buffed. That's so rude.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
fair. Yeah.
There are a couple that are like, or like there's like the one in Nighthold or whatever, right? Like the one that you have to
Mhm.
with the entrance on the boat, which I didn't realize was canonically on a
The
different
Ark
con.
Dockway.
Yeah. The boss there that like you have to like run out of these puddles or they will. I don't like the ones that are like if you screw up once you're insta gibbed, and that's
The one that gets me on that every time is the Zulamon one, not the outdoor one, the indoor one. There's the girl at the end, and she puts the puddles on the ground, and then she does like a line attack. I have just been, it's that boss fight takes like 2 or 3 minutes to kind of chew through, and it's just so easy to get clipped by the one-shot shadow cleave thing because the frontal doesn't look quite right if you're standing too close to the puddle, or you're on stairs and you're not really quite
yeah,
sure
it's
of
like
how
the
it's gonna
shallow
push
pit
up.
and like it like yeah, absolutely. 100%.
That one definitely gets me. I don't know, Josh, what are some of your midnight hot takes? What do you think?
I don't know, man. I
Are
feel
you
like I
enjoying
haven't.
Disc Priest?
I am not enjoying that. Like they've nerfed it so many times, and they are about to nerf it again. And suppose it with pretend buffs, like it's going to help in high mythic dungeons, but the kind of buffs they're giving it are just going to actually make it worse.
Hmm. Do you like the play pattern at least, even outside of tuning?
I like the play pattern. It's a
That's
good
cool.
pattern, but the thing is, like, it's not the kind of healer where, for instance, there was what was it? We were on the Chimeras fight, and either the other healer in my group died or missed the down phase. It is very difficult for me to solo heal a ton of people because I am just not designed that way. I have the one cooldown that could possibly do that, and it's on like a 3-minute cooldown.
Gotcha. I don't know, Rachel, do you have any big midnight hot takes, that you wanna share with the chat?
Housing is good. That's all I got.
Does that feel like a midnight class, or not class feature, like game feature? I think it's kind of in this weird thing where, because it came out before the expansion, even though it was developed for the expansion, like it doesn't quite feel like a midnight thing. It just kind of feels like a thing.
Yeah, I mean, I have nothing else positive to say about this expansion, so
Ooh,
the housing is good, and that's
that
all I
That's
got.
that is a
that's spicy.
burning hot take.
I think it is my least favorite expansion I've ever played, so.
Oof.
That's
Really?
wild. Yeah.
That is the hottest of
Why?
takes.
Story sucks. Story sucks and is
Yeah,
bad.
Erator hurt Delph Deep. I think that's reasonable. It's funny because like I actually think most people really enjoy the last suite of expansions on the story level, but I actually kind of view them as disappointments because I like Shadowlands, like to go back over the last four expansions and then go, I quite like Shadowlands the most is a little bit of a wild set of circumstances, but it's
Well,
kind of true.
you should be happy. Sylvanas is back, right? Like, are your
Kill me,
favorite
fucking
Shadowlands
hit me with your
character?
car. I hate that
She's
shit so
back,
much.
and she's like, "Oh man, the Shadowlands isn't what I thought," and now Shadowlands is gonna be fucking relevant again after it felt like they were trying to write it out.
Yeah, and they're gonna retcon it in a way that I bet is cringe. And I mean, my real problem with it is that Sylvanas stick around, right? That she came out, was like, "Hey, what's up, guys? Deuces," and then pieced, and you're just like, "What the fuck?" Right? Like, at least stick around to be a quest NPC for the next patch or something if you're gonna hit me with that kind of shit.
Yeah, I
I
also have
think
not.
she will be back in patch content. Sorry, Rachel.
It's okay.
I kind of think that the end of the expansion might be a Shadowlands revisited. I think it might be a like patch, 12.2 is some level of a return to the Shadowlands kind of thing, with like a new zone that's out there instead of like Koresh or something like that. I don't know. I stuff is happening, I guess. Who knows?
Have you all fought Nullius yet? Nullius?
No.
I have not fought Nelly. I'm not gonna fight him until the last second of the last minute of the last day of the patch. Like that's what I did with what was the girl? Kaiveza? That's what I did with Nexus
Kaiveza?
Princess Kaiveza, yeah.
Yeah,
I think you might enjoy the fight if you do it earlier. It's a fun fight, and it's like it's
Yeah.
not nearly as much of a pain in the
I didn't do any of that shit, man.
butt as the last two were.
really? Okay, that's good. That's good to know. I thought the one in Undertown or whatever it's called, the one where you have to kick the bombs around. I found that to be the most murderously frustrating thing.
You know, you want to know how I did that fight? I swapped to tank spec so that the bombs would not one-shot me. and I just sort of did the best I could, and I fucked it up a couple of times, but I survived it, and I was able to just grind the boss out after like 20 minutes of tank damage.
Yeah, I think I did it in Blood. I think I did that one in Blood Spec as well. I did do
Which
the
was
most recent. Sorry, you first.
I was gonna say, which is also what I did, by the way, for Kaiveza, because with Kaiveza, I did that as tank spec as well, because if I fucked up the looking at the shadow jutsus, it would not one-shot me in tank spec. I would survive with a little bit of health. And so you could, I kind of cheesed both of those fights, I would say, by rolling in as tank.
I never went back and solo double question mark Kaiveza, but I've done all the other ones. The Kaiveza one just annoyed me. I did a few attempts where I got like really low, and then I like just barely missed the clone or whatever, and I'd be off by like half a pixel, and it was before they nerfed it, and I never went back and tried it again with like end of patch gear because I just didn't care anymore. I care more about the toy than I do the title. And they tie the toy to the quest, so I'm cool with that.
Yeah, no, it is worrying because a bunch of that, like, screw up once and die mechanics went into the delves, which I don't like. But that was the thing that I found most annoying about Kavessa as well. Is like, if you screwed up if you screwed up the shadow once, you're done. And there's like, if you didn't, because there's like also like 5 shadows, which thankfully none of the delves are like this. It's like there are like 5 shadows, and if you miss one of them, you're fucked, right? Like, if you forgot the order, or you didn't spin quick enough, it was. I still think it was less frustrating than punting the bombs around to hit the guys that were like shooting beams across the thing. But
yeah, I will say they did make a very good change this patch with the delve boss when you go to do attempts. It now resets your cooldowns like a raid
Oh,
boss.
thank God. Yeah.
So you can do
that's
multiple
awesome.
attempts and not because that was the other reason I stopped caring about Kaiveza is because I'd blow my entire opener, and then if I died to a clone I missed in the first set, I'm just sitting there for 2 minutes waiting for army to come back or whatever.
Yeah, that's fair. I will be attempting Nolius at some point. I just haven't gotten around to it yet.
Yeah, it is going to kind of be the capstone for Cerathan, because Cerathan is not touching the raid and not touching dungeons, and so he is actually he is still getting all of his gear through prey and delves and stuff like that, and I just I think Nullius will end up being the AOTC for sort of like him as a character that is time boxed in the open world only kind of solo content zone.
Right. Well.
Okay.
We're at an hour and a half. Does anybody have anything else they want to say about the either the campaign or anything about WoW or anything else you've been doing before I put us into sign out mode? Right, well, seems like everybody's good. Then I will start wrapping us up. If you'd like to email us about any things we talked about in this podcast, you can email us at derpsgames@gmail.com or podcast@somederpsgames.com. You can rate, review us on iTunes or wherever else you find podcasts. All the links for everything will be down in the description. Buddy, do you have anything you're going to promote?
Kumitate comes out this week, so April 23rd. Play Kumitate, cool game, murder killing game, sweet stuff. I think that's it.
Josh, Low Kicks, Rachel, you have anything you want to promote?
I'm all good, thanks.
Yeah, sure. If you're out there, hire me. I need work.
I'd like to plug hire my cousin Josh.
Hire my cousin Josh. Yeah, that's good.
It's a good
Yeah,
plug. I
you know what?
appreciate that, cuz.
If you would like to hire Josh, who has experience as like a project manager, is that correct, Josh?
Yep.
Feel free to email us at submissiveplugame@gmail.com. We'll make sure it gets to Josh. And with that, I'm going to say until next time, dear listeners.
Until next time, loyal listeners.